Welcome to the deep dive. Some stories are so foundational, so uh, deep in our culture, we almost never stop to really question them. Genesis is definitely one of those.
Absolutely, the very beginning.
Right. But what if that creation story, Adam and Eve, the garden,
Mm.
what if we've been looking at it through the wrong lens for, well, centuries? What if its core message is hiding in plain sight?
It's a really provocative question, and that's what we're exploring today, Genesis chapters 1 and 2, but not as literal history or rigid dogma. We're using a pretty unique spiritual lens, Christian pantheism.
Okay, so for anyone maybe unfamiliar, Christian pantheism, it's not simply saying God is everything. It's more nuanced.
Exactly. It's the idea that God isn't some separate being outside creation, but is profoundly immanent, like within everything. The divine is the actual life force, the substance of the universe, not just its distant architect.
So our mission today really is to try and uncover this vision of God as deeply present, like the breath within all things, not a detached creator. We'll be peeling back layers, looking at the original Hebrew, early philosophers like Philo of Alexandria, even Jesus' teachings, trying to find maybe a kind of sacred code hidden in the metaphors.
A code pointing towards intimacy, embodiment, sacred harmony, moving beyond maybe more common interpretations focused on hierarchy and, well, dominion.
And the sources we're drawing on reflect that blend.
Yeah, it's a mix. Ancient Hebrew texts, Philo's philosophical work, which is crucial, the Gospels, and the core essay we're looking at weaves theological deep dives, exegesis, with almost a poetic meditation. It's described as a spiritual reimagining aligned with Christian pantheism.
And just as a bit of a tease, this perspective really shifts things. Like, what if the fall isn't about sin and punishment in the way we usually think?
Right, and what if Christ's role isn't just about, say, legal atonement, but something more like a remembrance?
Yeah.
A reawakening of a divine unity that was always there.
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's unpack this. Where do we start?
Let's go right to the core verse, Genesis 2.7. In English, it usually goes something like, YHWH Elohim formed the human from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the human became a living soul. Sounds familiar.
Yeah, pretty standard.
But the Hebrew, oh, it's packed with meaning. Even the verb for formed, vayetzer. It has this unusual doubled letter, a yod.
Okay. And what does that suggest?
Well, rabbinic tradition often saw this doubling as hinting at two formations happening at once. Spirit and flesh, divine and material, woven together right from the very beginning, not separate things joined later.
Interesting. So it's baked in from the start. What about the dust?
Right, it's a far, humble earth, the ground itself, but it's brought alive by nishmat chaim.
The breath of life.
Well, yes, but it's plural in Hebrew, the breath of lives. That tiny detail might suggest something bigger, like a continuous breath, a life force running through all creatures, not just Adam.
Wow, okay. Breath of lives. And the act of breathing itself.
It's veipak, breathed into. It's intimate, forcible, almost like mouth to mouth or bellows, stoking a fire, igniting the fire of being within that dust.
So the result isn't just a living soul. It's, what was the Hebrew?
Nefesh chaya, maybe better translated as a being alive, a vital, breathing entity.
So this whole picture, it's not a distant God performing an action. It's closer.
Much closer. It's a fusion. The dust is inhabited. The divine breath indwells matter, marries it. This reading really challenges that whole idea of spirit being separate from or trapped in the body.
So the soul isn't a visitor.
It is the body awakened,
Okay.
alive with God's presence. For Christian pantheism, this is like the first scriptural heartbeat, that essential unity.
That really reframes our fundamental nature. How does someone like Philo of Alexandria, looking through a philosophical lens, add to this?
Philo is fascinating. First-century Jewish philosopher in Alexandria, steeped in Greek thought, Plato, the Stoics. He reads Genesis and sees layers.
Okay.
For him, that breath wasn't just biological life, it was the logos.
The word, divine reason.
Exactly. God's rational, ordering principle that shapes the whole cosmos. So when God breathes into Adam, it's the logos itself entering the human form.
Making humanity a kind of microcosm, a reflection of that divine reason.
Precisely. Molded in God's image, filled with the essence of logos. And here's the connection to pantheistic ideas. If the Stoics believed the Logos pervades everything,
And it's explicitly breathed into Adam.
then the line between God and the world gets very blurry, doesn't it? It suggests profound indwelling.
It really does. If that same breath, that logos, is in all living things,
Then you have to ask, where does God stop and creation start? And that's not meant to be blasphemous. It's meant to inspire wonder. It changes everything.
okay, let's stick with that verse, Genesis 2.7, and the materials. Afar min hadama, dust from the ground. Seems simple, but you're saying there's more there.
Oh, definitely. The Hebrew words for human, Adam, and ground or earth, Adama, they share the exact same root.
Adam adama kaf.
It's not just a cute wordplay. It's linguistic, but it's also ontological. It means the human and the soil are, in a deep sense, one. To be human is to be of the earth. Earth conscious, earth born.
That cuts right through the usual Western split, doesn't it?
Ha!
Spirit good, body earth bad, or fallen.
Completely. The Hebrew itself resists that split. Adam isn't made despite the earth. He is the earth, just awakened. Animated nature, aware, alive with God's breath. Our physicality isn't a prison. It's where divinity happens.
So matter isn't just stuff.
It's the language God speaks. The earth itself is God-bearing. Think about the implications for how we treat the planet or even our own bodies.
And Philo, did he see this earth connection?
In his own way, yes. He saw the man of Genesis 1 as the perfect incorporeal idea of humanity. Then the Adam of Genesis 2, formed from Adama, is that idea made manifest, the spiritual entering the material.
The blueprint becoming real.
Exactly. He said something like, the man created in God's image is a thought form, implanted in the material world. And for him, Adama wasn't just inert dirt. It was prepared substance, ready, receptive to that divine form. The cosmos itself is hospitable to God.
Okay, the Christian pantheist takeaway here seems huge. If matter itself is imbued with this divine pattern,
Then the world isn't God's opposite, it's God's self-expression. Adam, from Adama, isn't a stranger here. He's creation's voice, its awareness, its mirror. Creation becoming conscious of itself.
wow, and later traditions picked up on this earth sacredness.
Yes, Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, often connects the earth with the Shekinah God's indwelling feminine presence. Earth as fertile, alive, sacred.
So that changes how we read the curse on the ground in Genesis 3 too.
It does. Maybe it's not the ground being inherently bad, but a sign of a wounded relationship. The earth groans, as Paul later says, not because it's being punished, but out of sorrow for the lost harmony.
And returning dust to dust, it's not just decay.
It's completion, reintegration into the divine flow. Which brings us to the incarnation.
Jesus.
In this view, Jesus' coming isn't God invading nature from outside. It's nature's confirmation. God in form, divinity walking on Adama. He didn't come to rescue us from the world.
But to show us what the world is.
Sacred, beloved, brimming with that divine breath, which forces the question,
If Adam is earth, and God is an atom.
is God not also in the earth? Truly, inherently, not just a metaphor.
Okay, let's move into the garden itself, Eden.
Yeah.
Often pictured as this, mythical utopia.
Right, but Genesis 2 describes it with some detail. Rivers, trees. It suggests maybe less a fairy tale place and more a kind of theological blueprint, a model for balance, order, right here on Earth.
Centered around the trees.
Especially at Chaim, the tree of life. And again, that plural Chaim lives. It's like the cosmic axis, divine vitality flowing out, sustaining everything. Eating from it means living in unity, constant connection.
And Adam's job. To tend and guard. Leavda ulishamra.
That's priestly language. It suggests sacred stewardship, not ownership or domination. Eden is like a living temple, and Adam is its priest, the earth's caretaker.
How did Philo read the garden? Still allegorically.
Very much so. For Philo, the garden was a symbol of the soul and also the universe, the rivers. Flows of wisdom, virtue, nourishment coming from God's mind, watering both the inner and outer worlds.
He had that quote about the soul being planted in the body like a garden.
Exactly. God has given it the faculties as plants, that by cultivating them well, it might bear the fruit of virtue. It's about inner cultivation aligning with divine reason.
So if Eden is this model of cosmic harmony,
Then the tree of life is the divine pattern within all living systems. It's a logos unfolding, in roots, rivers, but also in our minds, our instincts. To be in Eden is to live aligned with that sacred pattern.
but then there's the other tree, the famous one.
It's Hadat Tavara, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that word dat, knowledge, it's key.
It's not just intellectual knowledge, right? You said it means something more intimate.
Yes, it's experiential awareness. Like when the text says Adam knew Eve, it implies a deep relational, felt knowledge.
So before eating for that tree, what was their state?
The text says they were aramim, naked and unashamed. It suggests vulnerability, yes, but also transparency, oneness, no hiding, no calculation, just pure presence flowing with creation.
And after?
Suddenly, self-consciousness, shame, hiding, an awareness of opposites, good versus evil, self versus other, me versus you. What was unified fractures into duality.
So from this Christian pantheist perspective, the fall isn't primarily about, say, breaking a divine law.
Less about sin in a legal sense and more about separation, a fall from that state of oneness into duality. It's like a spiritual exile, but happening within consciousness first. Fragmentation.
We often frame the fall as, the first crime. Listening to this, it sounds more like the first heartbreak, the first division.
I think that's a good way to put it. It is division. The first crack in the human psyche, the moment we started believing we were separate. Separate from God, separate from each other, separate from the garden.
Before that, it was just flow, being part of it all. No need to hide.
Exactly. Then comes the dap from the tree, that intimate awareness. But now it's filtered through this new lens of separation. Seeing things in pairs and opposites. Good devil, safe, unsafe, man, not me. And the immediate reaction. Fear. Hiding.
And God's question, Ayuka, where are you? It's not about location, is it?
Not at all. It's existential. It's the voice of unity calling out, where have you gone in your consciousness? And Adam's answer is so telling. I heard you. I was afraid. I was naked. I hid. Fear enters the picture.
Along with shame, concealment.
They're the natural results of believing you're separate. So the fall isn't so much a divine punishment being handed down, but more like a psychospiritual schism, a split within awareness.
Did Philo see it this way too? It's about guilt.
Very much so. He saw it as a fall from rational harmony into the confusion of sense experience and passion. A philosophical misalignment, he might say. A tragic confusion of parts for the whole. He wasn't hung up on guilt. For him, it was the first forgetting of our inherent unity with the Logos.
So from the Christian pantheist view, this separation is an illusion. God doesn't actually leave.
Precisely. The illusion of separation is the fall, not the reality of it. God is still walking in the garden. God remains immanent. But the human mind gets clouded by this new fear. The divine presence, once comforting, now feels threatening.
But God doesn't abandon them, clothes them, sends them out. It sounds almost compassionate in a sorrowful way.
Right. And crucially, that divine spark, the nishmat chayim, the breath of lives, it isn't removed. It's just buried under fear, ego, illusion. The fall obscures our awareness of God's immanence. We are still dust and breath, still animated by God.
We just don't recognize it anymore.
We forget. The tragedy isn't that we became less divine, it's that we forgot we ever were.
So exile isn't just punishment either.
It's the start of the journey back, a call to remember, to seek, to reawaken, and that flaming sword at the gate of Eden.
Yeah, what about that? Seemed pretty final.
Maybe not. What if it's not primarily to keep us out, but to burn away the false self? The ego, the illusion of separation, the pride that thinks it can go it alone. It guards not a place, but a state of being. And maybe it's wielded by love, inviting us to shed the illusions before re-entering that state of unity.
This completely reframes Christ's arrival, doesn't it? He becomes less of a rescuer from outside and more of a reminder from within.
Exactly. A divine reminder, a rebreathing of Genesis into the world. Think about John 20.22. After the resurrection, Jesus breathes on the disciples. Receive the Holy Spirit.
Okay.
The specific Greek verb used there, enephyseizon, is incredibly rare. It only appears there in the New Testament. And in the Greek translation of Genesis 2.7, the Septuagint, where God breathes life into Adam.
Wow. So Jesus is consciously or divinely reenacting that original moment of creation.
It's a powerful parallel. He's inviting humanity back into that state of unity, rebreathing that divine life. So in this Christian pantheist view, Jesus isn't the grand exception to human nature.
He's the ultimate example of it, fully realized.
Yes. He shows what humanity looks like when it fully remembers Eden, fully embodies the logos that underlies all creation. He lives in such complete harmony that he simply is the world awakened, the voice of God speaking through human form.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. John 1:114. That logos, the pattern, the intelligence, took form.
They took form not to start a new religion separate from creation, but to call creation back to itself, back to its inherent sacredness.
And the crucifixion, how does that fit?
Not just a legal payment, it's seen as revealing what the world forgot. That the divine breath dwells even in suffering, in the broken, the forgotten. That loving the other, especially the marginalized, is touching God.
And the resurrection.
It shatters the illusion of separation completely. It declares God isn't gone. God is here, now, in the garden of the present moment, in bread, in wine, in your own breath, in the silence.
As the whole theological arc shifts. Instead of fall of punishment, atonement, salvation.
It becomes more like unity forgetting exile, which is really inner exile, awakening remembrance, a return.
And that return isn't to a specific place on a map.
It's a return to a perception, a change in consciousness, seeing the unity that was always there.
So salvation isn't about escaping this world.
It's about integration with it, realizing our connection. The fall wasn't the dead end. It was the start of the path back to the center, back home, within ourselves and within the universe.
So when we look back at Genesis through this lens, it stops being just, ancient history or a set of rules. It becomes
A poetic reflection of who we fundamentally are, where we came from, and maybe most importantly, what still lives deep within us,
waiting to be remembered.
Exactly. Reading it this way through the Hebrew nuances, the dust and breath, the garden, Philo, Christ, it hammers home one core truth from this perspective. We were never actually separate from God.
The illusion of separation was the fall,
Yeah.
not the reality.
Right. That divine breath, Nishmat Chaim, that animated atom, it's still moving in your lungs right now. The Adama, the soil his name came from, still supports us. The tree of life, it still waits.
Not behind gates and swords, but inside.
Within the soul that aligns itself with love, with truth, with awe. The fall didn't extinguish God's presence, it just drew a veil over our eyes.
And Christ, then, isn't the cosmic lawyer finding a loophole?
He's the lamp holder, illuminating what got obscured, showing us not just what to believe to get saved, but how to remember what we already inherently are.
Vessels of presence, fragments of Eden, breath made visible.
Beautifully put. The Christian pantheist doesn't need God to come down from some distant throne, because the throne is already here, woven into the fabric of the world. God didn't step into creation from outside.
Creation is the step God took to become known, to be experienced.
So following Christ in this light isn't about abandoning the earth or escaping it. It's about seeing it rightly, tending the garden, the inner garden, the outer garden, becoming aware again, walking with God.
Not striving towards some far-off God, but realizing God is already walking with us, always has been, even when we felt exile.
And that flaming sword, it still burns, but maybe its point isn't facing outward anymore. Maybe it's pointed inward, towards the false self, the ego, the illusion of being separate.
Yeah.
And once you pass through that refining fire, what waits isn't judgment. It's remembrance. It's coming home.
The garden isn't gone. It had been waiting for you to wake up.